Hello everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I'm sharing with you my full moon art for the month of July 2019. July is, the named moon is Buck Moon because this would be the time when in North America the male deer start to get their fuzzy little nubby horns growing. Also, it can be called the thunder moon because of summer storms. Um, that's another name for it. Also, strangely, it's called the Guru moon in some parts of the world. Not really sure why, just is, according to the internet. Um, I wanted to go with Buck Moon with a little Thunder Moon thrown in. The reasons being that when I saw the full moon last night on the soccer field, it was cloudy, and here in Arizona we have something called a monsoon season. It's a short amount of time, usually in July, where we have really violent storms. They roll in, they dump a bunch of water, and then they leave. They're very quick. Um, Sometimes there's thunder and light. Well, actually, often there's thunder and lightning. There wasn't any thunder or lightning last night, but there was a lot of clouds, and it looked like it was going to monsoon. It didn't actually ever produce anything, but we were hopeful. We always love monsoon season. It brings so much water to the desert, and it's warm rain. It's, you can go out and dance in it. It's fun. So I wanted to do a moon that had some of that type of clouds or things. And then, of course, I also wanted to throw a buck in there because recently I was in Santa Cruz and I was visiting the UC Santa Cruz campus with my kid who is going to be going there for his doctoral program for the next 4, 5, 6 years and working on the campus. And that is an amazing campus. It is a hill with a redwood grove at the top of it. And then as you drive up through the loop through there amongst the trees, there's buildings. And it's an entire campus up there in the trees. It's like you're literally in a forest and going to school and doing all your work there. The library's there. We visited the library. We visited the math department. It's amazing. So much different than what I imagine a college campus to be, where you're, you know, seeing a lot of streets and concrete buildings and things. It was beautiful. But one thing that we did see a lot of is deer. They're just wandering around on that campus. Like they're not even bothered. There was even a mom and a little fawn, little baby deer with spots on his back. They're just sitting there, just eating some grass. There was also turkeys, which I found really strange. Wild turkeys running around. But anyway, I since I had recently seen deer and been in the woods, and we also went hiking in the redwoods. I wanted to do that as well. So that all being said, I've got my deer drawn, I've got some trees, I've got the moon, and I want to put some wispy clouds running through the moon like I saw it. It was actually behind the clouds, and then the moon came out from behind the clouds, but there was still all these fuzzy misty things around it. In fact, I'm going to insert a picture I took. It's not a good picture at all, but it shows you what it looked like to me. Yeah, like I said, not a good picture. This was taken with my phone when I was out on the soccer field looking at the moon. So that was what I was going with the wispy things. It didn't end up looking very much like that at the end, but that's what I was trying to do. So the paint that I'm using here is India ink. India ink is a permanent fluid ink. I have these two sets, and they're getting pretty old now and dry, but I still have a bit of it. And I decided to use them for my background. I plan on collaging the main parts of the page, but I wanted to make a background. So I started out by mixing the blue color with a little bit of the white and a little bit of the black to make kind of um, a color of, nighttime, dusk, uh, the moon does rise here before it gets dark. I know you saw in the picture it was dark. That was after it finally came out from behind the clouds. Took it a while. It was hiding. So I did sort of a dusk type color background. And then I used some different stencils with the blue and the black and the white to create some foliage in the background behind the deer. Obviously, the deer is going to be, or the buck, that would just be a boy deer, is going to be the main focus with the moon being the secondary focus in this case. Um, but I wanted to have, like it's out in the wilderness. It's not in town. I wouldn't see a buck deer on a soccer field. That's just not going to happen. But they do like to hang around in the woods, even on college campuses. So um, I did the stenciling to add a little bit of texture to the background, and then I'm taking the black India ink and a fine liner brush and just creating those silhouetted shapes in the background. Then I took some deli paper that had some leftover paint scraped onto it, and I used my Liquitex bottle, which is what I had used to draw the moon, to cut out a piece of mottled yellow colored, uh, yellows and oranges and whatever, um, moon, of course, to fill that in. And then um, I wanted to add some little bit of lighter spots, so I just used my finger with that same white India ink, which is quite thick at this point. So it's almost like a thick acrylic. So I could easily just finger paint with that. It was no problem at all. And I'm still trying to get those wispy things. So I'm adding them back in with gray this time, just mixing the black and the white with a brush and kind of blending them with my fingers, trying to get that wispy cloud look, attempting to anyway. Still not very happy with it, but it's a good attempt. So then I go and decide that I need to start working on my deer. The first thing that I did was to use a pencil and trace around my drawing onto some deli paper. This is a translucent but quite heavy and durable type of paper that I can use to assist me in my collage in making the shapes. Um, it is tricky to try and take little pieces of paper and fit them into an outline like this. So it is easier for me to transfer my outlines onto this paper and collage on it and then cut it out when I want a clean line. If I want a furry, fluffy line, it doesn't matter. I can just tear the paper. But when I want something clean, I want to cut it, and it's just much easier to do it that way. So I traced out the different shapes, and then I got distracted by this piece of paper that I found when I pulled out all this paper. There was this interesting orange colored one with shapes on it, and I decided I wanted to put that on the moon. Like that's what happens. Oh, look, a butterfly. You know, I get distracted, especially by painty paper. I love it. I so wanted to use this one piece that you can see on the left there, but it just had too much pattern for a deer. I didn't think a deer would have that kind of tribal or um, Aztec pattern on it or something. So I wanted to use it though. It's such a beautiful piece of paper. I still have not been able to find a project to use it with. It's from a gel printing session a while ago. So I found some other pieces that still had plenty of pattern, but not as much. And I'm going to use them. There's some rusty ones, some kind of uh, ones that have some off-white, some coppery colors, different colors like that. And I am making the shapes and the pieces. I did have to make myself a little pattern for that body section. Um, just doing like you do, putting some collage on there. I'm using Liquitex matte gel medium. It is a thicker type of matte medium, which helps me to get everything glued down, I generally put the glue on both the background and also the back of the paper. If it's a really lightweight paper like these pieces of deli weight paper that are gel printed, then I just go ahead and put the glue right on the substrate itself and then lay the deli paper over the top because it doesn't really require such a big amount of glue as the thicker pieces. And I have a variety. These are all mostly either papers that have paint scraped on them when I've been using acrylic paint and then need to use up my excess. I just scrape it onto scratch paper that I have around and let it dry, and then I use that paper later. Also, some of them might be roll-offs where I'm using a gel plate to print and I roll my brayer off to clean it as in between printing. Um, I have quite a bit of that type of paper that it just becomes collage paper. Sometimes I stencil or doodle over the top of it. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on what it looks like. So I'm picking and choosing. I've got a lot of rusty red and yellow type colors. Would this be the true color of a deer? I think maybe they're more brown. But this is a white-tailed deer, so his bottom that is facing the camera because you're kind of looking at him from the back and he has his head turned. Um, I did actually use a reference photo for this, so it is what was in the photo. The deer was had its bottom and its tail towards the camera and then was turned and looking back, kind of. So that is why it came out like that. And I liked the fact that you could see it was a white-tailed deer by having that lighter section on the bottom and on the tail, which is what white-tailed deer really do have. It's not actually a white tail. Well, the tail is white, and then it has kind of a darker tuft on the end, but the the butt of the deer has a white section, and then that white section goes all the way under through the back legs and under the stomach as well of the deer. So that's what it's called. It should be called a white butt deer instead of a white tailed deer, but hey, tail can mean butt in some cases, or bottom, rear, behind, whatever you want to say. So I'm continuing on collaging the head and face of the deer with different colors. This is what I call paper painting when I'm using broad strokes of paint, only in this case broad strokes of paper, to make the highlights and shadows of the image by collaging it onto the deli paper that I have traced around and then cutting it out later after the collaging is on. That way I don't have to be very careful on the edges to make it all very straight and neat and perfect on the edges. This is one way of doing paper painting. Another choice, obviously, is to do an underpainting and then to apply the paper over the top, which if I'm making something that is for a customer, it's a commission, or I'm making a paper painting collage on a canvas, I often will do an underpainting and then collage over the top. This is more of a quick project, although it still took me 3.5 hours. um, not as fussy as doing that type of work. More larger pieces of patterned paper, more abstract, and not as, I don't know, I don't want to say careful because I am careful. I am thinking about what I'm doing, but in a looser style, I guess, is what you would say. Larger pieces of paper that cover more room rather than tearing everything really tiny and thin and doing it that way. I don't know if there's that much of a distinguishable difference between the two, but there is more than one way to do it. And on my channel, you'll see lots of different paper painting in different styles and ways of doing it. I've actually been looking at animals done by a different artist that is a collage artist in England. And I'm sorry that I can't tell you her name right off the bat, but I might try out her style of collage work on animals when I do my animal portrait this month, probably coming next week sometime. I might try her style. It's very graphic, very abstracted, and really interesting to me. I found her on Instagram. If I do that, I'll be sure to tell you who she is, what her Instagram is, so that you can go look. But I might try it out next week sometime. Different way of doing collage animals than what I'm doing right here. So I'm continuing to add layers and put more interest on the face. I've got the antlers done, and I'm going to put those on. If it doesn't have the big antlers like this, then it's not a buck. So it has to have antlers. Otherwise it would be a doe, which would be a girl. Although sometimes the does have little nubby horns as well, depending on, I guess, what type of deer it is. I don't know. I've seen them before with little teeny tiny nubs. Nothing big like this. They don't have a rack. And I'm not even going to make the joke that I really want to make about that. You can extrapolate that based on my giggling as to what I could have said. And then say it to yourself in your head. Yeah. So here I am still trying to figure out how to make the misty moon clouds. And I decided to just take plain deli paper with nothing on it and put that on with some fluid matte medium to see if I can get that wispy cloud look around my moon. And this is my last attempt to get something on there that looks somewhat like my photo, which not very much like my photo, but somewhat like it. And yeah, I was pretty happy with it. I think it looks like misty clouds more than any other thing that I did. So then, of course, you know, I love my shadows and highlights. I just love them. So I have a Pentel pocket brush pen, which is a synthetic brush pen with ink in a cartridge inside of it, and that ink is India ink. So we're continuing on with the India ink theme here because my whole background was done with India ink, if you recall. And I have a water brush, which is a tank of water on a synthetic brush. And I'm applying some of the India ink and then blending it out using the water brush. I'm also using a baby wipe. In some cases, if I think that I got too much black ink on there, I can use a baby wipe to kind of help blend it out. I don't want any harsh lines. I want a blended shadow. I'm also going to use my white Posca pen in the same type of a way to create some highlights. More shadows on here than highlights, but I did add acrylic ink using a Posca pen, which is an opaque white ink in a pen. Here we go, doing that and blending it out with the water brush. I hope you're enjoying this video and this series. I have a named full moon art piece for every single month since January of this year, and I will be continuing to do it till the end of the year. So I hope you're watching those. If you're liking this, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget, please do that. And also to leave a comment. You can share this on Pinterest or Facebook. That's really helpful. And if this is your last video for the day, please go click on someone who has a couple million subscribers and finish out your YouTube experience on their video instead of mine, so mine doesn't get punished for sending you away from YouTube. That's also helpful. This last thing that I did was a little bit of what I call unification using a stencil. This is a splatter stencil, and I'm using some off-white, some Naples yellow, and some copper to add just little splatters here and there over my composition to blend in some of those large pieces of paper with each other. It makes them look more unified, and it's kind of a cool effect. So that is it for me for the July buck moon. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will continue to watch my other moon art, which I will link in the iCards and the end screen. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye bye.